very complex site. We've got a lot of environmental controls on site, which created a lot of design complications, and also made for a really, I don't know, interesting construction project. I'd say that. Pretty complex foundations. We're dealing with a lot of things that you normally don't deal with on a typical greenfield site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through just general overview of Habor Point. Talk about the Exelon building, which is what we're going to walk, and then I'm also going to show you some pretty pictures about what else is going to be happening on Habor Point in the next 10, 15 years. So this, which you can barely see, is Habor Point, and this is really kind of the best picture I have for it. But this right here is the footprint of the building, and actually, you know what? This will give you a better look. So this here is all of Habor Point. Obviously, this is the master plan. It hasn't been fully built out yet. Give you a little frame of reference. This is the Morgan Stanley building that some of you guys might have passed in, and then our trailer right now we're sitting right about here. So to give you a little reference point, Hopkins is up here. The project we're looking at is Exelon building and the Central Plaza here. So going back to my grainy little photograph. So this is the entire project site right here, and one of the environmental controls that we have on site. We're working on a cap that's federally regulated by EPA, also regulated by MDE. Contains a slurry wall, which is kind of a impervious soil mixture wall. Goes from grade all the way down to bedrock that completely encompasses the site. And the history here is, Allied Chemical was here, and they were dumping a lot of nasty stuff into the ground. EPA came out, started regulating it, and put in the slurry wall to contain the dirty dirt, and then they put a basically a plastic cap over top of it, completely encapsulate the soil. So we're not doing any type of remediation, we're really just encapsulating the dirty dirt. And that's something that becomes a little problematic when you're trying to go in and put 21-story tower out there. You need to put in foundations that really get down below the cap. So a lot of our foundation work, we're working down in the dirty dirt. We also have an active environmental remediation system where they actively keep the water level within the site lower than the water level outside with the harbor. And that way we have a head differential, so if we do have any type of cracks or anything in the wall, water's going to be going into the site as opposed to having dirty water go out of the site into the harbor. And in order to maintain that system, you've got a series of pumps that go around the perimeter, and then we actually have a little pump station, holding tanks, where they actually pump out the water as needed to maintain that head, and then they take the water off site. And it's actually it's encompassed in our new building, so you'll see it out there, and it's halfway covered with concrete, but it needs to maintain full operation. Site environmentally needs to maintain full operation throughout construction. And this is only one project out of 3 that will be happening on this site. So here's the pretty picture. We have, so the first building on Habor Point, Morgan Stanley building, office building, built out, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. Exelon will be delivering in 2016. And then the next project, which hopefully we'll get under construction here before the end of 15, is Point Street Apartments. And as far as the rest of the parcels, we're still working with that. So you can see just kind of the overall layout, really trying to connect with the existing street grid. We are also looking to connect this site with Harbor East via the Central Avenue Bridge. So that's the bridge I thought you guys were talking about. It's the only bridge on my mind, which really connects us to on the north side to infrastructure in the rest of Harbor East.
Where would I connect from Harbor East?
Be going right across living classrooms, and it's just a continuation of Central Avenue onto the peninsula. So we'll have a mix of uses with these buildings. This is office. This is Exelon Towers office, residential, ground floor retail, and then we've got plans for hotel, office, and additional residential projects out here. We also have a 8-acre park planned at the point, and then the promenade that some of you guys probably run on goes along the inner harbor, will continue all the way out here to the point and turn back up into Harbor East. So one of the I guess the guiding design pieces that we have here is we're limited by the cap as far as what we can do going down into the dirt, but in order to accomplish underground parking, we've got a single level of underground parking that's central to the site, Central Plaza Garage, and we've essentially, instead of building the buildings at grade, we're going to be building up the grade on the site so that we can fit in that one story of underground parking. So you'll see that out here on the site with the first phase of the Central Plaza Garage. And then you can, if you take a hard look at Morgan Stanley building, you'll see there are some doors up there on the second floor lead to nowhere, and that's because that's planned out for the final grading for the site. So Morgan Stanley building, you guys can see that. Exelon Tower, 21 occupiable floors. We've got 500,000 square feet of office, 103 apartments, 35,000 square feet of retail, ground floor on the north and south side. The office is 100% leased by Exelon, and they'll be taking space, and we expect them to be fully operational in space by 2016. Today's just give you some pretty pictures of the views. This is what we use for a lot of our marketing. So you really can't see a whole lot on here with the layout. Give you an idea. So you guys are coming after we did all the groundwork. The groundwork was, we spent a year in the ground. It's probably some of the more difficult, risky operations that we had out here. And just give you an idea of what we were doing. Everything out here is pile supported. Whether it's Plaza Garage in this area or the footprint of the building, we have a bunch of massive pile cap foundations. But in order to support all the foundations, we drove roughly 1,100 pile, 60, 70 foot steel 18, 16 inch diameter pile. So if you live down here, we apologize. We made a lot of noise. We're going to make a lot more noise than the rest of the buildings. One of the other things that, besides the pipe pile that we drove throughout the footprint of the building and the structure, we also had our slurry wall that helps contain the dirty dirt that we've got on site. We had to reinforce that wall. So along the perimeter, we were driving 70-foot sheet pile into a narrow trench 3 to 5 feet wide, 70 feet down to rock, and we did that all along the perimeter. Get my mouse up here. All along the perimeter of the building, and that was just to really maintain the integrity of the wall as we were driving 1100 pile right next to it. So that's the Exelon Tower. We're going to walk through the building and you'll get a much better feel for it above ground once we walk through it. This is looking at a couple of our other buildings. This is a view looking southeast at our Lake Street apartment building. And these give you just a better idea of the general scale of what you'd be seeing on site. This be our Morgan Stanley building over here. So this, where John was standing out there with his bag of hard hats, he would be right there where some of you guys were coming in. This is the existing Ferndale Fence building down at the corner. So that just gives you an idea of what kind of urban environment we're trying to build. Much like Harbor East, you guys walk through Harbor East, it's probably one of more dense, densely populated. The structures are tall, streets are narrow. We're trying to widen this space out a little bit more, but we've still got a scale that's bigger than most of what you see in Baltimore City. So again, Morgan Stanley building will have a sister building that's currently in the works. And this is what our park is going to look like. And this is rendering of the final build-out. Exelon buildings, right, tucked right in there. So that was brief. Do you guys have any questions before they get into the details of construction?
How much slower was it driving your piles through that cap compared to a normal project?
How much slower?
The driving the pile isn't the issue. The issue is cutting the cap and giving it prep to do it. Once you get that part out of the way, driving the pile really isn't the biggest issue.
The other challenge that we had here was that this site had been occupied for probably 100 years with different companies doing different things, so there were existing foundations that were in the ground underneath the cap. So there was a lot of preparation prior to cutting the cap, and then there was a lot of preparation removing existing foundations in order to drive the pile. Had it not been for that, the pile would drive like any other pile-driven job.
How thick was the cap?
Half an inch is what the actual liner is.
Yeah, that's the line.
With the liner and the drainage net. But there was 3 foot to 7 foot of overburden on top of it.
Right.
So you got to clear the overburden, cut it, and then, what we found, and it's amazing over time, they really didn't clear the old foundations, they just built over top of them. So we found complete railroad beds 5-6 feet down in the ground. And they just, went on with life, and then they said,
pushed into the basement.
They took the existing structures and raised them, just leveled them out, and then they brought in fill to cover up any ununiform surfaces to create a level surface to put the cap on. But below those existing foundations that were there were other foundations and railroads and railroad beds, and so.
the environmental is chromium.
Yeah.
The chromium started here. There is in Maryland, was one of the bigger sources of chromium ore. So back in the 1860s, 1870s is when they built their first chromium plant. The real way that they extracted chromium was they took the ore and they ran hot water over it. So whatever then washed out of it either went into one bucket or just went into the ground, and they didn't, back that time they didn't really care. So then they dried the liquid and it gave you the chromium dust, and that's how the chromium developed. So over 100 years, I think they stopped here in the mid-1980s, I guess, is when Allied Signal stopped.
1985, I believe it was.
So did they put the cap on, like, with this plan development in mind, or they just put it on to sort of contain the site and now you guys are working with